fighting in Maine in early October. Burrs says both the Phipps letter and Mather's manuscript must have gone to London by the same ship in mid-October. This is from Governor Phipps, Boston, October 12th, 1692. So, hey, we're just a few days past that anniversary. I hereby declare that as soon as I came from fighting and understood what danger some of their innocent subjects might be exposed to, if the evidence of the afflicted persons only did prevail either to the committing or trying any of them, I did before any application was made unto me about it, stopped the proceeding of the court, and they are now stopped till their majesty's pleasure be me known. From what I understand, Phipps put a stop to this shit because one of the girls actually accused his wife, and he's like, oh, that's enough of this shit. Well, on October 29th, Judge Sewell wrote, "The Court of Oyer and Terminer count themselves thereby dismissed." Asked whether the Court of Oyer and Terminer should sit, expressing some fear of inconvenience by its fall, the governor said it must fall. Perhaps by coincidence, Governor Phipps' own wife, Lady Mary Phipps, was among those who had been called out upon around this time. After Phipps' order, there were no more executions. Funny how that works. In January 1693, the new Superior Court of Judicature, Court of Assize, and General Gaol Delivery convened in Salem, Essex County, again headed by William Stoughton as Chief Justice, with Anthony Checkley continuing as the Attorney General, and Jonathan Latson as Clerk of the Court. The first 5 cases in January 1693 were of 5 people who had been indicted but not tried in September. Sarah Buckley, Margaret Jacobs, Rebecca Jacobs, Mary Withridge, and Job Tukey all were found not guilty. Grand juries were held for many of those remaining in jail. Charges were dismissed against many, but 16 more people were indicted and tried, 3 of whom were found guilty: Elizabeth Johnson Jr., Sarah Wardwell, and Mary Post. When Stoughton wrote the warrants for the execution of these 3 and others remaining from the previous court, Governor Phipps issued pardons, sparing their lives. In late January, early February, the court sat again in Charlestown, Middlesex County, and held grand juries and tried 5 people: Sarah Cole of Lynn, Lydia Dustin, and Sarah Dustin, Mary Taylor, and Mary Toothker. All were found not guilty, but not released until they paid their jail fees. These fucking people had to pay their jail fees, too. Lydia Dustin died in jail on March 10th, 1693. Just fucked. Just fucked, man. Well, at the end of April, the court convened in Boston, Suffolk County, and cleared Captain John Alden by proclamation. It heard charges against a servant girl, Mary Watkins, for falsely accusing her mistress of witchcraft. In May, the court convened in Ipswich, Essex County, and held a variety of grand juries. They dismissed charges against all but 5 people: Susanna Post, Eunice Fry, Mary Bridges Jr., Mary Barker, and William Barker Jr. were all found not guilty at trial, finally putting an end to the series of trials and executions. There's a lot more to this shit that you could definitely look up and find out, but just wanted to give that a heads up. So after someone concluded that a loss, illness, or death had been caused by witchcraft, the accuser entered a complaint against the alleged witch with the local magistrates. And that's how that worked. And then you went to the court, and they basically, like I said, they fucking decided whether or not that you were causing someone's issues. Whatever their issues might be, you might be the one causing it. So, although the last trial was held May 1963, public response to the events continued. In the decades following the trial, survivors and family members and their supporters sought to establish the innocence of the individuals who were convicted and to gain compensation. In the following centuries, the descendants of those unjustly accused and condemned have sought to honor their memories. Now, there were events in Salem and Danvers in 1992, which were used to commemorate the trials. In November 2001, years after the celebration of the 300th anniversary of the trials, which would have been 1992, Massachusetts legislation passed an act exonerating all who had been convicted and naming each of the innocent. The trials have figured in American culture and have been explored in numerous works of art, literature, and film. They also gave like £500 to the families. Big fucking deal. There's memorials everywhere, and that's something I can get into now. So there is a Salem Witch Trials Memorial Park in Salem, which I have been to. It's pretty neat. What I'm going to do is on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Travis and Vic Horror, we're going to have pictures of these memorials up. You know, it's Giles Corey, which we've already posted, and all the others, George Burroughs, etc., etc. Just it tells you how they died and all that information. So, again, this is something that I don't know. It just kind of it was bigger than Salem. Obviously, this is something that still is talked about to this day. Everybody knows what the Salem Witch Trials are. Or were. There were some medical theories about their reported afflictions as well. The cause of the symptoms of those who had claimed affliction, Jesus Christ, continues to be a subject of interest. Various medical and psychological explanations for the observed symptoms have been explored by researchers, including psychological hysteria. I would say that's a big cause of it. In response to Indian attacks, yeah, it was a pressurized time. Convulsive ergotism, which was caused by eating rye bread made from grain infected by the fungus Claviceps purpura, which is a natural substance from which LSD is derived. That would work until you look at the other symptoms and they don't match. An epidemic of birdborne encephalitis lethargica and sleep paralysis to explain the nocturnal attacks alleged by some of the accusers. I think the first girls were sick, and I think everybody's followed suit. And then, you know, the whole witch craze just was part of it. Some modern historians are less inclined to focus on biological explanations, preferring instead to explore motivations such as jealousy, spite, and a need for attention to explain behavior. I'm sure it's all of those things, and political, too, if you want to know. There was also the Ipswich witchcraft trial of 1878, which was known as the Second Salem Witch Trial. So this shit didn't end in the United States after this. Let's talk about some of the ways in which this has been talked about in popular culture. And I'm totally going to skip over, you know, the books and stuff, because there are so many books about it. But of course, The Crucible is probably the most famous thing that came of this. This was a film, a Franco-East German film, originally titled La Sorcière de Salem, starred Simon Signoret and Yves Montand, and directed by Raymond Rouleau. It's a screenplay which was adapted by Jean-Paul Sartre from Arthur Miller's The Crucible, which is a book. Basically, it's an allegory for McCarthyism. Very similar thing, too. Witch hunt took place in the 50s, and it took place then. Except people weren't being put to death so much in the 50s. It was more like just ruining their fucking lives. Hocus Pocus, that would be an obvious one. Then all the Crucible films that are out there. You've got Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Keeper of Souls, a horror film. The Covenant took place in Ipswich. Trying to see if there's any worth of shit. A Haunting in Salem, The Lords of Salem. What a piece of shit that movie is. Paranorman, a movie I love, by the way. It's an animated film that takes place in Massachusetts town that in 1712 held witch trials and convicted and executed an innocent girl. Again, obvious connection to the Salem Witch Trials. The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I saw that movie. It's a good movie. It's a horror movie depicting autopsy performed on a dead woman found in a bizarre crime scene. The coroners found increasingly strange clues and experienced unexplainable events in their attempt to find out the mysterious body's identity and what happened to it. The body seems to be a body of a Salem witch at the end of the movie, so spoiler warning. Then there was also an early episode of the CBS radio program You Are There. You can actually find that if you look it up on your podcast on Apple, which dramatizes the key events of the witch trials. This actually played in 1947. You've got the television series Bewitched, which includes 6 episodes in season 7 that were filmed on location in Salem, with a plot that includes time travel to 1692. Now, Bewitched, funny thing is, Samantha, there is a statue of her in Salem. So, yeah, look that up. You'll see it. Leonard Nimoy's television series In Search Of actually aired season 5, episode 109, Salem Witches, from 1980. Trying to see what else significant. The Simpsons animated show, they had a segment of the 1997 Halloween special Treehouse of Horror, which is based on the Salem Witch Trials. I could go on and on. You got Scooby-Doo, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, In Search of History, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Charmed, on and on. This just has created so many different things. There was an episode of Ghost Hunters where they explored the haunting of the Hawthorne Hotel by the spirit of Bridget Bishop. Vampire Diaries, just all sorts of connections. American Horror Story Coven from season 3. But again, I could go on and on. Just so many connections in modern pop culture from the Salem Witch Trials. It's just one of those things where it's going to be known forever, I feel like. So, to kind of get into my trip to Salem, again, I mentioned the statue of Samantha. There's also, outside of, I believe, the Witch Museum, they've got the ideal of a, old, ugly witch statue out there. I got a picture of that, posted it on our Facebook. Trying to think of some other things. Obviously, I talked about the Witch Memorial. You've got the Witch Museum. I did not go in there. I did go into Count Orlok. Now, this is just a kitschy, wax museum. Let me tell you about this. Count Orlok's, I got to think of it, Nightmare Gallery in Salem, Massachusetts. And it was kind of cool because when we went, and this is no big deal to me, and I'm not just trying to name drop because I've met Kane Hodder about 5,000 times. Kane Hodder was there randomly, doing a little meet and greet action. Also, Linnea Quigley was outside of this thing. The weekend in Salem was a busy, cool fucking time. So if you ever get the chance to go to Salem, Massachusetts in October, that is the time to go. If you're wanting to experience the Halloween season at its fucking finest. Because if you go on a weekend, it is packed to the brim, people in the streets. We also got to check out what it was like, check out what it was like, like when it's not packed. And it was interesting as well. I mean, it was just a cool time. They were doing trials in a certain area. The food was great there. The drinks were fantastic. So I definitely recommend going to Salem if you ever get the opportunity. Boston, not so much. Didn't think too much of Boston. Glad to say I've been to Boston now, but that's about as far as it goes. As far as Universal Horror Nights, I have not talked about that yet, so let's talk about that. On Wednesday and Thursday of last week, which would be the 10th and 11th, we went to Universal Horror Nights. Now, I flew out of Boston, and I got to Orlando, I don't know, I would say 11 something. It could have been later. I can't really remember. We went and ate at Toothsome, which was the Toothsome Chocolate Emporium. They have badass milkshakes, burgers, all sorts of good stuff. It's right outside of Universal. Then we go in, and it's Universal Horror Nights. And Universal Horror Nights this year was just like last year, fucking packed. And in fact, it was more packed this year than it was last year. The first night was Wednesday. Again, that was busy as hell. But first thing we did is we went to Stranger Things. I was not so interested in Stranger Things, and the reason why I wasn't interested in Stranger Things, not because I don't like Stranger Things, it's fine, but I just knew it wasn't going to be scary because, the show's not scary. But, that's okay. It's not a big deal. So we went, and it fucking took 90 minutes to get through the Stranger Things one. Horrible. God, it took forever. Anyway, it was not a bad house at all. And then from there, we went to some of the I can't remember the order we went to, so I'm just going to go in order here. Halloween 4 took us about an hour to get to. It was a decent house. Michael Myers looked pretty sweet.